So thank you, Steven. Thank you, EIF, for giving us ECTA the opportunity to share his view, and thank you very much, Mrs. Eldes Castillo, for this invitation. So there is a couple of strong messages that I want to share with you on all that I have heard so far. So I'm in service for less than 100 days, so I'm still in my 100 days, so I still ask for some forgiveness. I'm used to say I'm 2 months now in service. But we welcome, in fact, a new principle of connectivity. It's not that we welcome it. Our members are committed to it. And they are not only committed, they are engaged. And they are not only engaged, they are engaged for a long time. They are engaged to help achieving the objective, they are committed to help to achieve the objective, and they invest a lot. If you would look at what Maxime Lombardini, the CEO of Free, said 2 weeks ago at our conference, he said that they invest 30% of their revenues in CAPEX, in investment. They say that in France, 50% of the investments are made by alternative operators. If we would look in Germany, the Breco companies invest up to 24% of their revenues in their network. If we would look in Italy, Fastweb, all those numbers are 2015. They invest up to 31% of their revenues in their network. If I now would look at the two biggest operators in Europe, start with Orange. In Europe, they invest 15% of their revenues. If I look at Deutsche Telekom, they invest 16% of their revenues. If those two companies, and I only about speak two, would have invested at the rate of investment of Free, they would have invested almost 10 billion more last year in networks. The second message I want to bring, and this is of course comparable to size, so we see that they invest much more at much higher rates. The second message I want to bring is to come a little bit back to why is competition driving investment, because we all speak about we need investment, we need to change a lot of rules and so on. The basic rules to drive an investment has never changed. Basic corporate finance, you look at the value of your project, the NPV calculation, it's positive, you invest. So what does that mean? If one operator comes with a new product, I called it at the Gigabit Day, challenges, and he threatened a bigger operator's customer base, and many of their customers may churn. The incumbent operator, in that case that I called SMPix, can still invest a lot of money just to protect his customer, not for churning. Does that mean that he has to increase prices? Does that mean that customer has to pay more or pay for other things? No. Just because he wants to protect his customer base, he can invest a lot of money in the network and still create value for the shareholders. Because that's what is discussed in boardrooms. Net present value of a project, when you make the calculation, is what the CFO and the CEO sign off when they go to the board to ask for their investment to happen. So those are very, very important messages. Now, if we would think, what would happen if there would be less regulation? Because we say simplification is one of the words. If you would make a cloud of words, simplification would probably come in the middle, somewhere in big with investment and so on. But simplification does not mean deregulation. That's something completely different. Because what would happen if there would be less competition? If there would be less competition, there would be less investment, because the big operators, what would they do? they probably would pay out more dividends because it's what the shareholders want. When you have the discussions about in the boardrooms and so on, and you invest, you would look at the dividend policy. But if you pay more dividends, then it would be on the detriment of the investment. So less competition would mean less investment. The driver for investment will not exist anymore. More dividend would be paid to the detriment of investment. Then the other message I want to give is related to the fact that achieving the objective of the gigabit society is a journey. It's a journey of all operators climbing the ladder of investment and working to not only on the one side increase the supply of connectivity, but also indirectly increase the demand for connectivity. And I come back to that in a few seconds. And in this journey, we need to make sure that we do not lose anybody, that no operators fall out of the boat, and certainly smaller operators. And that, it's very important. It's like in the classroom, when you have lots of students, you want them all to have their diploma. And why is that important? Because one of the other elements that is very important is the innovation. And we all know, I will not repeat this time because I only have 4 minutes, the example of what IBM said to Bill Gates when he went to them to sell the DOS. He said there is no value in software, the value is in hardware. He was totally wrong. Or what Xerox did with the mouse that they invented and the graphical interface that they invented when they gave it to Steve Jobs. That became then even the Windows application after, because Microsoft copied it from Steve Jobs, but copied it from Xerox. But the key message is here that it's extremely difficult for well-vested organization to innovate. And why is that? But just because they do not want to cannibalize their business model. So on that side, it's much more important to have lots of smaller organizations that can innovate, smaller operators and small SMEs that innovate. And why are small operators important for citizens that want to innovate or small operator to innovate? It's because when you innovate and you have a great idea, it's all about creating bargaining power. And you go to a big operator, different things can happen. I speak from experience because I have been in the business before. We knocked at the door of an SMP operator, an incumbent, and they just refused to see us. No value in your ID. The other thing that can happen is that they see great value in your ID and they give you a 50-page contract with all kinds of clauses that you as small company or as individual, you cannot check, you do not understand, and you don't have the money to pay thousands of euros to a law firm to check for you. And what does that contract say? It says if there is great value coming out of your innovation, the big operator will take the value and you will remain very, very small. So when it comes to innovation, it's very important that all those people that innovate, and I do not speak here about the telecom industry, I speak about all the sector of the industry that needs to have access on the networks and on the digital economy, because we all know how important the digital economy is for Europe. Is that they have bargaining power and that they are able to discuss new business models with smaller operators. If you know the example of Mobile Viking in Belgium, it's exactly what they did. Mobile Viking is an innovation on the smallest mobile operator, not on the biggest one, on the smallest one. So to remember, ECTA members are not only committed, they are engaged to achieve the objective. They invest massively compared to their size, more than the big operators. Simplification does not mean deregulation. and we call up to the politicians to make sure that alternative operators can continue to invest and innovate for the welfare of the end user, all the sectors of the European economy, and at the end, the welfare of Europe. Thank you very much.